Happening right now, the Trump administration got itself into a huge mess and they're scrambling to fix it. So, if you remember a couple months ago, Late Night with Stephen Colbert got canceled out of nowhere. CBS said that this was due to financial reasons, which seemed a little bit weird. But as we'll explain, there's some details going on behind the scenes with both Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel eventually that actually justify blaming the Trump administration for these actions taking place. So much so that even Republicans are now starting to get afraid of Donald Trump and his actions, a clip that we'll share with you guys in a second. But before we get there, we have to acknowledge that Trump has been putting pressure on these corporations to get these shows canceled. Trump's been doing victory laps after they've been canceled. So the interesting development right now is that they're walking it back. Donald Trump is walking back what he is saying. Let's take a look at Caroline Levitt do just that.
With all due respect to former President Obama, he has no idea what he's talking about. The decision to fire Jimmy Kimmel and to cancel his show came from executives at ABC. That has now been reported, and I can assure you it did not come from the White House, and there was no pressure given from the President of the United States. And how do I know that, Kaylee? Because I was with the President of the United States when this news broke in the United Kingdom. We were enjoying the beautiful and spectacular state visit that was put forth.
Yeah, so she says it right there, right? That there was no pressure from Donald Trump on ABC to get Jimmy Kimmel fired. But as we know, Donald Trump was doing victory laps, and he was kind of insinuating that it was his pressure that got, not even insinuating it, straight up saying it. So to see this tone shift in the White House's approach to these free speech issues is extremely interesting. But we have to understand why what the White House is doing is wrong. And even Fox News is starting to air out some of their grievances with the Trump administration. Let's take a look at this clip.
Well, the media and politicians and everyone, all the editorial boards of the nation's biggest paper, including the Wall Street Journal, that wrote Mr. Kimmel's words were only moderately offensive. We want to be clear that none of this justifies the right's resort to regulatory censorship.
Yeah, so walking through what is happening then, Caroline Levitt is saying that there was no pressure from the Trump administration to get Jimmy Kimmel canceled. But as Fox News is explaining right there, what's actually happening is, well, hey, the FCC chair, Brian Carr, is saying that we can either do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way, implying that if ABC doesn't listen to Trump's demands, that they can face repercussions. And some of those repercussions can include losing your broadcasting license. That's similar to what happened, not exactly the same, with the CBS and Stephen Colbert situation. What took place there was that there was a merger going on behind the scenes between Skydance and CBS's parent company, Paramount, that needed approval from the Trump administration. So they know that they have these chips that they can play and these pieces that they can move that causes people to essentially do what they want. It's very similar to what a mob boss would be doing, so much so that even Ted Cruz recognizes that. Let's take a listen.
Yep. What he is saying is Jimmy Kimmel was lying. That's true. He was lying. And his lying to the American people is not in the public interest. And so he threatens explicitly, we're going to cancel ABC's license. We're going to take him off the air so ABC cannot broadcast anymore. And I got to say, he threatens it. He says, we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way. Yeah. And I got to say, that's right out of Goodfellas. That's right out of a mafioso coming into a bar going, nice bar you have here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. And I got to say, look, I understand.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly what Ted Cruz is saying right there is what took place. So for those of you that don't know, these companies, ABC, CBS, they have a broadcasting license. And a term of the broadcasting license is that what they are producing has to be in the public interest. Now, the public interest isn't very clearly defined, and that's where Donald Trump and Brian Carr are taking advantage of the phrase to to say, well, you know what? It's not in the public interest to be saying things that we don't like. And Brian Carr even goes so far as to essentially admit that himself. He's saying that he's acting like a mafia boss. He's wielding his power to do the president's bidding. Let's look at that.
Today, President Trump, on his way back from London, suggested that TV networks could lose their licenses.
They give me only bad publicity or press. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away. It will be up to Brendan Carr.
FCC Chairman Brendan Carr told Fox News,
President Trump has fundamentally changed the direction of this country. And one of the ways that he's done that is he's run directly at these legacy mainstream broadcasters, and he's smashed the facade that they get to control what we get to say and what we get to think.
So we started by looking at Caroline Leavitt say that, well, the Trump administration wasn't actually applying any pressure. And we're at this point acknowledging that Donald Trump knows that these corporations have the licenses that they need to broadcast. And even the way that Donald Trump himself says it right there sounds like a mob boss. He's saying, well, they have their licenses. And you know what? I'm going to leave it up to Brian Carr. Wink, wink, hint, hint. And Brian Carr picks that wink, wink, hint, hint and runs with it. He picks it up and runs with it. He says that, you know what, the president of the United States is the one that is able to determine what people should be saying, not independent actors like Jimmy Kimmel or Stephen Colbert. Again, the implication being that if they do not get to determine if they do not get to determine what they are saying, then Donald Trump does? That isn't how that's supposed to work. At least traditionally, that's not how that works. Let's look at a former FCC commissioner explain just that.
It is not the FCC's job to judge what is and what is not funny. It is not the FCC's job to determine what content should be. It's not even the FCC's job to determine if there's bias in a particular broadcaster.
So there you go. Going back to the term public interest, current FCC commissioner is saying, no, this goes against what the FCC is supposed to do. So in the grand scheme of things, we have realized, again, Donald Trump clearly is the one that is putting the pressure behind the scenes, and he can apply that pressure regardless of whether he's in the United States or in the UK. And we shouldn't really expect any truth-telling from Caroline Leavitt, but what we should expect is more crackdowns like this mafia boss style of saying, you know what, you're not saying too nice things about me, buddy, so be careful now, is exactly the play that Donald Trump is using to try to get people to do his bidding and say what he wants. He himself is admitting that, obviously in the clip that we saw earlier, but also in this situation where in this next clip where he is saying that people not saying good things about him is not free speech. Let's take a listen.
George Papadopoulos had to pay $16 million to me because of what he said. And that's ABC. You had to pay more than that. Your network had to pay more than that. So I think it's very sad. But I think that reporting has to be at least.
So starting right there at the beginning, it doesn't matter whether the story is not true, whatever. You don't get to determine what gets to go on air. And then criticizing a person is free speech. It's the epitome of free speech. It's not cheating. It's reporting the news. It's saying what is going on. But Donald Trump right there he's tying two things together. He goes on later in that clip to say that these outlets are part of the Democratic National Committee, so that basically that they're a branch of the DNC, and they're utilized by the DNC to do bad Trump press. But he's tying that in there because he's also trying to ban Antifa. And this is a larger theme where he's using all of the tools in his arsenal to restrict free speech. It's not going to stop with Jimmy Kimmel. It didn't stop with Stephen Colbert. Everyone should be concerned. Ted Cruz is concerned. Other Republicans are concerned. Democrats wrote a letter Senate Democrats wrote a letter to FCC Chair Brian Carr asking him to come and testify about these crackdowns on free speech. So we'll see what comes from that. But in the meantime, if you want to stay up to date with that story, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers by the end of the month, so please help us achieve that goal. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like. With that being said, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode.